Hey, what's up guys? My name is Josh, and you may be familiar with a friend of the show, Israel. He's dropped off a lot of headphones for a review, and recently, me and him did kind of a collaborative effort to acquire this HE-60, which is known as the baby Orpheus. That's kind of like the street name. Now, I don't think that Sennheiser ever actually called it that. These are all used. You can't buy a new one, and these are a electrostatic headphone created by Sennheiser. One of a few that they've made, and definitely probably the cheapest. And I want to kind of share as I go along in a multiple part series, and this is going to be obviously part one of Resurrecting the baby Orpheus, but there's a little bit of a problem. So the problem is that getting resources for this is really difficult. One, getting the fitting correctly, making sure the part is actually compatible with the device, making sure that it sounds good, making sure that it operates well, because as we know, electrostats are pretty finicky. But I also want to share pricing as we go along and how much those sorts of things cost, because there really isn't any videos online about aftermarket parts for this that I could find. And the resources that I did find, the discussion pages and stuff for this headphone, have been providing some somewhat incorrect information that I want to kind of correct as we go along here. So let me explain what's going on with this headphone and what we plan on doing with it, what we have done with it, and kind of where we're going to go with the baby Orpheus. So the good iterations of these devices cost between $2,500 to $3,500 online. This one was purchased for $1,500. Now looking back now, I think I would have advised him to save up and just buy a nicer model, because the state that this arrived in was pretty crap. And that's going to be a lot of what we're going to be either paying or fixing as time goes on. A lot of them don't come with the Energizer that the HE-60 originally came with. And it's pretty well known at this point, although I can't verify for myself, that the Energizer that came with the HE-60 is no bueno. It's just not very good. A lot of people upgrade them for Sax Energizers or other electrostatic Energizers on the market. Right now, what we're using is probably not the best option. So a while ago, Hyphen sent over their Jade 2 electrostatic earphone system, and they've yet to take it back. So I just had this laying around, so when Israel bought this, it was like, oh, whatever, just bring it over and we'll listen to it on this. And I have to say, the sound is pretty amazing. Like, it's really, really resolving. Like, it's very, very resolving. But I do know for a fact that this is not the best Energizer anywhere near, what it's capable of. And on the Jade 2, I'd listened to it on this Energizer, found it underpowered. For this seems to be a little bit more efficient than the Jade 2. So instead of the Jade being able to max out this Energizer, I'm playing about halfway up at all times on this. So what we're actually looking at right now, and let me move this for a sec. So it's unverified as of right now. We want to try it. But iFi sent over their IDSD and their iCan, and I've been so impressed with these. And they actually have a similar like tube hybrid model that is actually an electrostat Energizer as well. And I asked them to actually send that over so it could test with this. And we'll see how that sounds. These things sound great, the iCan and the IDSD. They're expensive, very expensive, but they sound amazing. And hopefully the Energizer carries the same level of energy and pizzazz, or whatever you want to call it. Hopefully it carries the same quality of sound over on the electrostatic side. So as of right now, that's the plan. iFi is relatively kind of unproven in the electrostatic realm. Not a lot of people talk about them. A lot of people will talk about like Blue Hawaii's or some really nice Stax amps, but those are kind of outside the price range of what Israel is willing to pay. So we're trying to get a good result off of not an absolute crap ton of money. Because if we spend tens and tens of thousands of dollars on audio equipment, yes, it's going to yield a good result, but we're going to be really getting into that, diminishing returns area pretty quickly. And some of you with a really keen eye will notice there's a couple parts on here that don't look exactly right, and you're correct to think that. So you might actually notice that this headband is not the stock headband. It says Sennheiser on the left side here, and it's black. And this is a 5.8X. This is the original headband on here. But the paint is chipped, and cracked, and it's just not the best looking condition. He also had some aftermarket kind of head padding on here, which is originally supposed to be like a leather pad that doesn't have this little bump. Right here, it's just like a straight kind of curved plush leather piece, and he had replaced it with kind of a mesh like we have right now, but it was also in bad condition. So I actually ended up just buying like a Sennheiser branded head padding, and we put the new head padding on the 58X headband and put the 58X headband on the HE-60 from basically this metal down. And you can do it with like a screwdriver and just your hands. It's real simple. So that fit was okay, and these actual brackets for these ear cups are in good condition. One thing that we did notice, and I'm not sure if we did it on accident while trying to adjust this stuff or if it arrived like this, although I didn't notice it before, so it was probably something that we did, was actually the grills got bent in a little bit here. Now we can fix that if you can access the inside of the grills and just basically push it out. But we have a little bit of a problem. This goes into something that is just like, I don't know what the owner, the original, he said he was the first and only owner. I don't know how much of that I believe, but this goes into something that the original owner, like I just have to question like basically how he fucked it up so bad. Because there's been a lot of things on here that are actually really disappointing once these arrived, and they sound good, although they do have their issues with sound, which we'll talk about in a second. But there's just so many things to where you're like, wow, this owner like really neglected this pair of headphones, unfortunately. So we are going to have it professionally serviced, but we were going to try and clean it out as best as we safely could, and that brings us to two other issues that we have with this headphone. One is that there's actually a metal grill, like a protective grill on the inside ear cup. And there's normally like a rubber kind of grommet section that this fits into and is held in place, but it arrived outside the headphone. Like it was just held in by the pad. And the way it's shaped is it could like easily fall in and connect with the driver, and it's a metal mesh, and just the stupidity of the previous owner just astounds me. Like, why would you ever take that out? So one of the projects that we were going to do while we were trying to clean the drivers out was to actually take that mesh and put it back in the grommet that it's supposed to be in. Because right now, in order to make sure it doesn't fall out, I have a ring taped around the circumference so it fits tightly in there. And also I think it's taped to the actual device underneath the pads. Not the most attractive option, not the best option, but we can't get it into the headphone. We can't even access inside the headphone because some of the screws are completely stripped. Like, we tried rubber bands, we tried super glue, we tried everything short of actually drilling a hole into the screw to unscrew it. We just could not get the screws undone, and the way they're mounted makes like you can't really get a pair of pliers around them to twist. So we cannot so far access inside the internals of the headphone to undo the damage that may have been caused by the previous owner. Honestly, I'm sure there's a bunch of particles in there, a bunch of dust, hair follicles, things like that. We would like to get those out, and we would like to put that metal mesh back where it's supposed to be. Why it was taken out in the first place and not put back properly, I will never know. So the pad job that we did was not great. We just wanted to get something because the normal pads that come with HE-60 are like perforated leather on the inside, microfiber or cloth on the outside, and then leather on, or the part that touches your ear is microfiber or cloth, and then the outside of it is leather again. So it's a lot like this Elite hybrid pad from Deconi. So it's perforated on the inside, cloth outside, and then leather on the surrounding outside ring. So I reached out to Deconi, and they very kindly sent over a pair of their hybrid pads to adapt to this. Because I had read on a forum somewhere, I couldn't find the post again, but it wasn't really that important. I had read on that forum post that everything build-wise on the HE-60 was basically identical, except for the driver configuration, to the 600 and 650 and 660 and 58X. And when it comes to pads, that is wrong. So the way that these work is they have a ring that basically clips onto the outside ring of a, you know, a 600 or a 650. There's like a ring inside the actual headband and it clips on, and with those headphones, they come with foam, and that kind of helps keep it in place. It's a very solid connection. You can take it apart with your hands, doesn't require any special tools. It's actually a great system. But that same internal ring on the HE-60 is actually bigger, so this actually can't fit around it to clamp onto it. So aftermarket pads like these Daconis unfortunately don't work. So you have to get something with a proprietary fit of the HE-60. So he had some aftermarket pads on it, and they had like a ring that actually fit, like a plastic ring, and we took off those pads and stripped the ring part from it. And one of the problems with the pads is like they were actually like flaking, like really thin flakes. And if you know anything about electrostats, it's like a super no-no. Like you don't want any sort of dust or particles inside the driver, to which by the sounds of it, there are many. And so we took those off right away, and we super glued aftermarket pads onto that ring. Some aftermarket hybrid pads that we had. And then stuck them on the headphone. That way we could listen to it without, you know, risking getting more particles than there already are. I think Israel found some new actual, like original pads, like Sennheiser branded HE-60 pads that he ordered 2 pairs of, and I think they're on their way. They should be here, I don't know, relatively soon. Probably won't make a video once that gets there because it's not like a big enough update. And then the last of the mods, which we're actually grateful that they did do, and it turned out okay, but they actually put a Stax adapter on here. This is actually the original plug that was put into it, and they just cut it and rewired a little bit there. So that part was done, I mean, not the best I've ever seen, but it's passable and it works, and it seems like a solid connection. It doesn't have like intermittent cutting out or anything like that. So it's all right there. One of the other things that we found out was that Sennheiser will actually service this headphone. And so we're going to send it to Sennheiser to get serviced and hopefully cleaned if they can get, you know, I'm sure they have tools to actually unscrew stripped screws. And hopefully they can get this all cleaned up, and with the new pads, it should be looking pretty good. So one of the things that we're considering doing, because it is so hard to find aftermarket individual parts, like finding a headband that's in good condition after being so old, is pretty difficult to do. So we could repaint one of them, or one of the other things we were considering, and same thing with the grills, although the grills are in good condition, so we could keep them. But he's considering getting like keeping either this one or putting on the 660S headband and the 660S grills on here. And he came up with the name, the HE-60S, which is kind of funny. So it's one of the things we're considering doing. That's just cosmetic. It doesn't change the sound or anything like that. And it definitely strays away from original, but you know, having modern grills with the little Sennheiser branding, unfortunately, finding that is actually really difficult. Like finding those parts without having to buy a whole new 660S would just be, you know, which would end up just being kind of a waste of money. If anybody has those parts and wants to sell them, email me. And I'm not interested in buying the headphone unless you just want to sell me like a broken headphone for like a super cheap rate, but I will buy the grills and the headband off you. So next time I'll update you on the price of the new pads. I'm not sure how much those were. If we do end up getting grills and headbands for it, we will update you on the price of that. And the Energizer to make it work, because you know, you have to factor in the price of an Energizer when you have an electrostatic headphone. And then we'll talk about the servicing costs, if there are any, if it's just a cleaning or if they have to actually replace parts, which I'm not sure. And this will bring me into the sound, and this is gonna make a lot of you electrostat guys go. Okay, so as of right now, there's a couple issues with the sound, like actual issues, not supposed to be their issues. So unfortunately, all the sound issues are intermittent. So there's a couple things going on, and we're trying not to play this a whole lot because it could be bad for it. We are aware of that. There's some slight just popping. Like when you plug this into power, there's these very crispy little cracks. And it seems to be kind of ebb and flow. And that usually is associated with dust or particulate of some kind. There is also a bit of a whine out of the left ear specifically, like the left ear cup. There's a bit of like a electronic whining. and that is intermittent as well. And this is potentially a worse situation. I don't think this is a particularly well shielded cable, so it could be interference of some kind because electrostats are particularly sensitive to that. But that seems to be intermittent, and we did test Bluetooth, like we had Bluetooth keyboards around it, and those seem to make it worse, but they weren't entirely the issue. Hopefully they'll be able to diagnose that at Sennheiser when we do send this in. So there's definitely a lot of stuff to take care of. Hopefully nothing is going to be detrimental and everything can be fixed, but we really need to clean the drivers and get them serviced and have them tell us if it's an actual issue with the driver, in which case we would look at having to get the drivers themselves replaced, or if it's something that can be just easily fixed by a good thorough cleaning by a professional. All right, so I will talk briefly about sound, but I really haven't had the listening time on this because I'm afraid of breaking it, with the popping noise and everything. But what I will say about this so far, and I will have an official review once it's all said and done. And I don't know how fast or slow the segments are gonna come out, so it could be done by the end of the year, it could be done in 6 months. I will update you when there are updates to be had, but it's not going to be a thing where it's going to be done in a week. So the review will be out eventually, but we'll see. So sound. It is incredibly resolving. I'll put it this way. I have HD-800Ss here, and there is nothing about that headphone that makes it seem dull or not resolving. In fact, it seems particularly resolving above most other headphones, if not all. Take the resolution difference between like an HD-600 to an HD-800. Regardless of whether or not you like the frequency response, the 800 resolves way better. This is basically that same level of difference between the two. It is very resolving, like very resolving. And part of this, though, is the proximity effect in how the sound is delivered, because similar to the 600 and 650, it's all happening in your head, as opposed to the 800 where there's definitely like a wide feeling to the sound. So if you had the 800 sound, but just in that same proximity, it might be equal in kind of, locatable or observable resolution, but this is like force feeding all those details into your brain, and it sounds incredibly clear. Timbre was also above most other headphones that I've heard. So things like, especially the metallic sounds, like they were all so different, like chimes and metal strings and plucking and things like that. They all had their incredibly crisp and distinct different sounds. And if you had 20, literally 20 different types of metal instruments all playing, you'd be able to isolate every single one without any issue at all. Now, I had a bit of a preconceived notion of what this was supposed to sound like. I've never heard it before. I thought it was going to be kind of like basically an extreme HD-650, and I only assumed that because of the build. I know it's a completely different driver, but just in my brain, I looked at this build and I thought, okay, 650, right, makes sense. But it's not. It's not as mid-range focused as the 650 is. It's more like upper bass, not upper bass, but like kind of mid-range through the top end, and all of that is incredibly focused. It's all incredibly clear. And I don't include any bass response in there because it's not a very bassy headphone, sorry. And that's a downside that is shared by almost all electrostats, is they basically don't have kind of any level of bass, like any strong level of bass compared to like a dynamic or a planar, which are just going to have this incredibly impactful bass or this deep rumbling bass. This doesn't have that earth-shattering bass. But as an overall headphone, so far, this thing is sounding pretty incredible. But we'll stack up all the prices at the end of things and look at kind of, maybe if we came out on top over like a $2,500 or $3,500, or if we should have just bought the nicer unit in the first place. So we'll see, and I'll keep you guys posted when I have an update to post. Let me know in the comment section what you think, if you have any experience with this, if you have any recommendations for this. There's things that I'm not aware of, because I'm sure there are plenty, because again, resources for this are pretty scarce. So me and Israel will be looking at the comments to see, good recommendations and stuff like that. Check out the Josh Fowler merchandise store and check out all the other reviews. Subscribe if you're interested in keeping updates on the HE-60. And until the next video, my name's Josh, signing off.